I have to say, I find myself feeling upset at religious people who say we should be allowed to practice our religion in peace. Religion never hurt anyone, and what does it matter to you what I believe? I say you can believe whatever you want, as long as your belief does not have a hurtful impact on those around you. And sadly, this is not necessarily the case. Time and time again, year after year, we hear news about some family who has faced tragedy brought on by faith, a belief in God or the notion that God will save you. In 2004, for example, we hear about the unbelievable report that a mother killed her children because she thought they were possessed by demons. Meghan Lippiatt suffocated her baby with a diaper, then placed her older son Silas in a tub of warm water and drowned him. She lived in a Christian world. Her father's husband had been the vicar at the Holy Trinity Church in Jesmond, Newcastle. She believed in both God and the devil. Was her belief in the devil to blame for the killing of her children? Where else might she have concocted the idea where her children were possessed by demons? Was she trying to rescue them? And what if she had no religious belief whatsoever, no belief in the devil? Would she have thought her children were possessed? At the conclusion of her trial, she was acquitted of murder and placed in a psychiatric hospital. Sadly, stories like these are not uncommon. In 2014, Zakieya Avery stabbed 2 of her children to death and wounded 2 others while attempting an exorcism. The need to exorcise demons is purely religious dogma. It's religion that places unsupported truths into people's heads, some of whom react based on those falsehoods, resulting in unthinkable actions. Did these children die because of demons or religion? Stories like these focus our attention on the actions of brainwashed people who believe in the devil and the demons as part of their religious beliefs. Without that dogma, mothers and fathers would never need to take a knife to their children in an attempt to exorcise or to scare demons away. These crimes against humanity are not limited to innocent children. A perfect example of this is the murder of Susan K. Clark in 2008. She was 59. Jan Clark performed an exorcism on his wife by wrapping her up in a blanket and held her to the floor. She suffocated to death. Following up on a tip, when the police entered the house, they found Susan's body wrapped in the blanket with a cross and a sword on her. Jan Clark said he was trying to perform an exorcism while the demon entered his body, leaving her to die. If Susan and Jan Clark never heard of the devil and demons, would Susan Clark still be alive? Tell me again how your religion never hurt anyone. Today, in 2016, most of the Western world looks at groups like ISIS as terrorists, as the peak of religious fundamentalism. It can't be denied. Stories from around the world fill our news screens with Muslim religious extremism. The Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris come to mind. Religious zealots killing in the name of their faith. 11 people were killed, 11 injured because of the drawing of Prophet Muhammad and jokes about Islamic leaders. The motivation to kill the staff at Charlie Hebdo was driven solely by the religious belief that they must avenge the Prophet. What bothers me the most about Islamic extremism and the attacks carried out by these terrorists, and all terrorists for that matter, is that they believe what they are doing is morally justified based upon an ideology that cannot be supported by evidence whatsoever. They are killing for an imaginary God, or if you're Christian, a God other than yours. And really, how can you determine which is the correct God? But what about Christian terrorists? Is there even such a thing? Yes, and they live on one particular side of a very divisive fence. Abortion clinics often come under attack from Christian fundamentalists. In 1994, Dr. John Britton and James Barrett, a clinic escort, were both shot to death outside the Lady Center, Pensacola. Reverend Paul Jennings Hill was charged with the killings. He was a Christian terrorist. Reverend Hill received the death sentence and was executed on September 3, 2003. The clinic in Pensacola had in fact actually been bombed before in 1984 and was bombed once again in 2012. These Christian attackers are no different than those who undertook the attacks in Paris or Belgium, just different religious reasoning for making the decision to kill. While a Christian might object to the use of the word terrorist, Anti-abortion terrorists are, however, in fact, considered a current domestic threat by the U.S. Justice Department. Recently, a shooting at the Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs in November 2015 left 3 dead and 9 injured. The suspect, Robert Louis Deere, had previously acted against other clinics and referred to himself as a warrior for the babies at his hearings. Neighbors described the suspect as reclusive, and police from several states where the suspect resided described a history of run-ins dating back from at least 1997. Deere often praised people who attacked abortion providers, saying that they were doing God's work. This evangelical Christian is a terrorist and clearly demonstrates, regardless of your view on abortion, religious beliefs prompted him to do harm. From the King James Bible, Mark 16:15 through 18. He said to them, "Go into the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name they will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands, and when they drink the deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. They place their hands on sick people, and they will get well." This, of course, leads me to talk about the snake-handling pastor of a small Pentecostal church in Kentucky who died after being bitten by a rattlesnake during a weekend church service. Jamie Coots, the pastor of the Full Gospel Tabernacle in Jesus' Name Church, was handling a rattlesnake during the service when he was bitten on his right hand. According to the people at the church, Coots verbally refused treatment at the church. When the ambulance arrived at Coots' home, he was unconscious. His wife, Linda Coots, signed a form declining medical treatment because God will save him. An hour later, when the emergency personnel returned to check on Coots, he was dead. That was in 2014. The following year, 60-year-old church parishioner John David Brock was handling a snake during the Sunday service at the same Pentecostal church when he was bitten in the arm. He died shortly after. Not unexpectedly, members of the church declined comment. If you want to handle poisonous snakes, that's fine, especially if you die. You'll just be another candidate for this year's Darwin Awards. However, when you encourage others, such as Mr. Brock, to do the same, you're crossing the line. Now, your religious views and opinions could kill somebody else. You might argue that they're all handling snakes based on faith too, but that's not quite right. At some point in time in the past, these other people were indoctrinated into your crazy-ass belief that God will protect you from snake venom. No matter how you try and justify it, it's just asinine. Sadly, about 100 snake-handling practitioners have died since the early 1900s, and some 125 Pentecostal snake-loving churches remain. More people are going to die. So tell me again how your religion never hurt anyone. Do you have faith? Does having faith in God actually help? Does prayer? Sadly, for David Hickman, both faith and prayer failed him. Born premature in 2009, his parents, Dale and Shannon Hickman, wanted him to be born at home and trusted only in God to take care of him. According to court documents, testimony from medical experts said that baby David, born 2 months premature, had more than 99% chance of survival with medical treatment. Without treatment, David would have 0 chance of surviving. His parents, Dale and Shannon, were later found guilty of manslaughter for failing to seek medical attention for their newborn son. The conviction was later upheld by the Oregon Supreme Court, meaning that the couple will continue to serve their 6-year prison sentence. Clearly, religion, faith, and prayer failed little baby David, and the responsibility not only lies with the Hickmans, but with the Oregon City followers of Christ Church and the individuals who promoted the belief that God would save their child. Sadly, this is not the first time a child has died solely relying on faith to heal. In 2010, 16-year-old Neil Beagley, whose family also attended the Followers of Christ Church, died in agony from kidney failure due to a common urinary tract blockage that could have been repaired years earlier. And there's so many more. 11-year-old Madeleine Cara Neumann died in March 2008. Prosecutors said that her parents, Dale and Leilani Neumann, ignored previous symptoms of severe illness as their daughter became too weak to speak, eat, drink, or walk. Madeline's parents prayed instead of seeking help as their daughter died in front of them. They were later convicted of homicide by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The real shame here is that David Hickman and Neil Beagley died under the same false religious beliefs as Madeline Neumann. Prayer and faith failed Madeline 2 years before, and not learning from that and doing the same thing over and over again, praying over and over again, expecting different results, is the very definition of insanity. Have you heard of the Day of Ashura, or Azadari rituals? On Ashura, some Shiite Muslims observe suffering by cutting their bodies with knives or chains. It sometimes is referred to as a blood donation. This religious custom shows solidarity with Imam Hussein and his family. Through them, people mourn Hussein's death and regret the fact that they were not present at the battle to fight to save Hussein and his family. This religious tradition is quite frankly brutal, and if you're squeamish, now would be the time to skip to the next marker in the video. I had thought to make the images black and white, however I have not. It's required to see the viciousness of this tradition. The ritual can be interpreted as severe and cruel, and here too, children are affected. Generally performed by men, they cut themselves often to the point of serious bodily harm and blood loss. Each cultural region performing the ritual in its own style. This can range from whipping with branches at one end of the spectrum to slicing one's back with short blades on the end of chains, also in a whipping action. I'm sure it's devout, somehow. The true harm is when children, those who have no religious understanding, are cut by members of their family with horrifying results. How can a child understand what is being done to them, and how can cutting them demonstrate solidarity for Imam Hussein? Yet, these religious traditions continue to harm children year after year, and despite the fact whether or not God exists, it's barbaric. There are countless more examples of how religious beliefs cause harm throughout the world. The mass Jonestown massacre or suicide comes to mind. More than 900 people dead, including children. It's a truly egregious use of religious power. I can't imagine anything religious pundits could ever say to justify these shameful acts of harm. So tell me again how your religion never hurt anyone.